What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno, and we're back with arguably my favorite track on the Braingravy label, a label with excellent tracks, but which wasn't around all that long. There's only 7 releases. Now, don't get me wrong, each and every one of them is worth owning, and I own double copies, I think, of every one. And in fact, for Braingravy 2 here, believe it or not, I own 3 copies. 2 official ones, and then 1 test pressing. It was distributed through Astrophonic, which is a label / distributor in France. Anyway, the label overall, Braingravy, was the brainchild of Steve Mills, an acid-techno producer who made a really wild and energetic style of acid-techno. He doesn't produce in the scene anymore, left the scene a little while ago. But yes, the Braingravy label was one of his record labels, including, or in addition to, the Project 303 label, another label that didn't leave around all that many records, but each one of them is worth owning. We're going to listen to a tune he made with Sterling Moss, a huge member of the acid-techno scene, of the London Sound, and off-time partner of Chris Liberator. Maybe not quite as much now as in the decade between maybe like '08 up until about 2018, 2019. Again, Chris produces a lot these days with Sam DFL, but I think more than any other pairing, even going back to like the Chris Liberator and the Geezer, or Dynamo City, which is to say Chris and Henry, or aka Dave the Drummer. But yes, I think more tracks have been made by Chris and Sterling than just about any other duo. This one is Sterling and Steve Mills, as I said, and it's called Electric Landlady. And I'll just say that it is very much indicative of the sound of Braingravy. It's fast, it's energetic, it has wicked acid work, and there's a really notable moment in the track which is related to some other tunes, including one I reacted to recently, which was the Beery and Geezer remix of Dub Signal, originally by Bad Boy Pete. And in that track, I talked about how there's the main breakdown in the middle of the tune, it builds, it drops, and that drop is brilliant, it's fantastic, but it's actually like 2 measures later, like a 64 later, when it kicks up to an even higher gear, and that moment is maybe my favorite moment in the tune. And there's something similar that happens here. There's the main breakdown, it drops, it goes for a bit just at a really high level, and then it sort of gets very tense and you realize something's about to happen, and then it drops back in even harder on a level above the main drop that happened a couple measures before. So keep an ear out for that. This is Electric Landlady by Steve Mills and Sterling Moss from 2012. I can't believe it's been that long ago, on Braingravy 2. Very chugging, like techno train on the tracks type of feel. Deep rumble. rapid fire, frenetic acid. Ride so well.
Everything, is electrified nowadays. Because it doesn't actually hit through the eardrums. So therefore the belief comes into, through electricity to the people. That's why we play so loud. We're playing for our sound to go inside the soul of the person, actually,
once again, it's just great from beginning to end. I do especially love the way, to my ears, and maybe if I had a full behind the scenes look at the way the track was produced, I would learn it's not quite so simple as this, and that wouldn't surprise me. But in the overall composition, it makes me think that it's essentially Mills style acid work with Moss style percussion. A lot of Sterling Moss tracks have this like very crisp and like stomping acid techno production, like the kick drum and the drums, basically the kicks, the hats, the ride cymbal. It just has this really powerful and crisp sound to it. And Mills again is perhaps most famous for his like wicked and wild 303 work. And I remember back in the day he used to post videos of himself like working on an acid line, but he'd have essentially like a guitar pedal which would like do these like accents and distortions. So like in real time he'd just be adding little like accent improvisations to a line. So again, it's obviously something that he was very talented at. So when I hear a track like this, it sounds like Steve Mills acid meets Sterling Moss percussion, and that's a great combo. So again, there's other tunes on the Braingravy label that I put on the same level. There's a track by the 303 Pirates, which is basically Dynamo City, aka Chris Liberator, Henry Cullen / Dave the Drummer, and Steve Mills, and they did a track called No More Fucking Rock and Roll. It's an absolute stormer, like just a brilliant tune. Again, there's a number of tracks like That's the Shit by the Geezer and Steve Mills on I think Braingravy 6, which I used in the Live at Acid Rain set, which you can still see. It's one of the first like mixes I put up on my channel now, almost 3 years ago, but you can go check that out. I think it's like maybe 2/3 of the way through the set. In any case, the point is, this is the best of what I see as Steve Mills' contribution to the acid techno world, and it's also what I think Sterling Moss does so very well, which is make thumping kick drums and great percussion work. So yeah, I think it's arguably the best tune on Braingravy, with a couple others that are in conversation, in contention. And as I said, if ever anything happens to my test pressing here, which the reason I used to want to get records a little bit early, and as I mentioned in my reaction to that Dub Signal track from the Planet Techno label, which is run by Beery, as well as its sub-labels like Planet Acid Techno and so on, he used to make available some of the test copies, because again, you do a big pressing, 500 or whatever copies of a record, you want to make sure there's no like errors, so they make a limited test run on white labels, and they make sure everything's good with it, and then they'll put that into larger production and distribution. And then obviously if there is a mistake, they'll like, wait, we got to remaster it, we got to like repress it, and then once we do that, we can make the larger set. And so oftentimes test pressings are released a little bit before, if they're sold at all. In some cases they're not really sold, but sometimes labels or even the artist behind the record will make some of them available, for close friends, or put them on a website and see who will scoop one up. And so I used to buy them, and Astrophonic, at least for a while, like eventually Astrophonic moved to where they didn't want to deal with individual like DJ buyers. They wanted to like only sell to like record shops who would buy 100 copies or 50 copies or whatever. And so they eventually made it so that you had to buy like at least 3 records. And so at that point I was like, all right, like I'm gonna try to find some of these like elsewhere on Discogs or on the Stay Up Forever site, of course. But the point is, I used to get records a little bit early, and so for I think like 3 or 4 of the Astrophonic releases, I have a test pressing. I think like the first 4 records on the label. In any case, as I said, if anything ever happens to this test pressing, I have 2 more pristine copies waiting. So yes, ultimately I am very happy to have copies of this label, because again, it didn't last all that long. I want to say the last Braingravy release and the last 303 project releases were like now 7-8 years ago, like 2016, 2017, maybe 2018. I think maybe the last Braingravy was right around like 2018, 2019, but it's definitely been like a half a decade or more since both labels ended, and Steve Mills again just moved on, and I don't think he produces anymore, certainly not like acid techno like he used to. So I'm very happy to have copies, multiple copies of all these records. Definitely a banging tune. Let me know what you think of it, and I will see you next time. Peace.